as a veteran and a retired sergeant major, having been one of those that came back.
Mr. Walz, who I just want to tell the Bowmans is the highest enlisted man ever to be elected to Congress and has lots of experience, decades with the Minnesota National Guard. And also they have a program that he might want to describe of the Yellow Ribbon Campaign, which tries to deal with the returnees in a way that at least starts on the path that you have suggested, Mr. Bowman. Mr. Walz, thank you for your effort.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Bowman, for being here. There's no words that are going to be said here that are going to ease the pain of your loss, and we clearly understand that. I'll have to say, though, especially Mrs. Bowman, you occupy one of the highest and most respected positions in this society as a Gold Star mother. And I have to tell you, as a member of Congress and as a veteran and a retired sergeant major and a citizen, I'm ashamed that you have to come here today. That the idea that you would have to come here and ask this Congress to do the right thing for your son is absolutely appalling. And with all due respect to our news organizations, which I'm happy they broke that story, there is not a single person in this room that doesn't know this was an issue. There are members, there are people sitting behind you, veterans and advocates that have fought decades on this very issue, and I've worked with them. They've advocated for this, they've spoke about it, and we have seen year after year after year not addressing this in a real comprehensive manner, and that is simply appalling, and it's a shame. And I can tell you there's not a member up here especially, and there's not a member in Congress that hasn't stood in front of soldiers, talked about them, talked about how great they are, but time and time and time again, this Congress, and all of us are guilty of this, have simply failed to move things forward that make a difference, and that's an absolute shame. And I said that there is no one in this country, again, should ever allow anyone to stand in front of a soldier if they're not going to stand behind him and move this. Never. We've seen those yellow ribbons. Many of them are very faded now, and you can barely read them. And the fact of the matter is we haven't done what they said. We haven't addressed these issues. We haven't taken this in. Senator Dole occupied the same position, both of you and Ms. Shalala said here in addressing the issue at Walter Reed, and Senator Dole was very clear in what he said. He said, you spent billions putting them in harm's way, spend billions and whatever it takes to get them out, and made that very clear as us of what we need to do. So there are things here, and I wanted to, and Mr. Kennedy's going to speak in a little bit, and I think this is a very important piece of this puzzle, and both of you, with your keen understanding of how this works, especially from National Guard families, I can tell you this, having been one of those that came back, we were in support of OEF, but sitting in there with OIF veterans, when we came back, they showed us the horse whisperer and told us to be nice when we went home. And that was the extent of it. That was in 2004.